Welcome, dear viewer, to what is possibly the most scientifically accurate yet ridiculously funny animated video you will ever watch about a Friday night. Tonight, we follow our hero, Dave. Dave is a perfectly average animated flat-designed human being standing right outside a glowing neon bar called the Golden Molecule. He has big eyes, a wide grin, and absolutely zero idea what is about to happen to his body over the next several hours. Dave works in accounting, he has had a long week, and tonight he has declared with full confidence that he is going to have just 2 drinks. We have all been Dave. We are all Dave. And tonight, science is going to explain exactly why Dave never actually has just 2 drinks. Buckle up, grab some water ironically, and let's dive into the wonderfully chaotic world of alcohol and the human body. Dave walks through the door and orders his very first drink. It is a classic cold beer, beautifully illustrated with bubbles rising and a little foam on top. The moment that first sip touches his lips, a cascade of biological events kicks into motion that most people never think about. Alcohol, chemically known as ethanol, is a small molecule, and it is incredibly sneaky. Unlike food, which has to be broken down slowly through digestion, ethanol does not need much processing at all. It begins absorbing directly through the lining of the stomach and small intestine almost immediately. Within minutes, it is sliding right into the bloodstream with the ease of someone cutting the line at a coffee shop. The speed of absorption depends on many factors, including whether Dave ate dinner. Spoiler alert, Dave had a very small lunch and skipped dinner entirely. This will matter enormously later. Let us zoom inside Dave right now. Picture a bright, flat-design animated bloodstream that looks like a colorful highway system running through a cartoon body. Ethanol molecules, illustrated as cheerful little hexagon shapes with tiny legs, are zooming through stomach walls and flooding into the blood vessels at remarkable speed. The stomach absorbs roughly 20% of all consumed alcohol, while the small intestine handles the remaining 80%. Because Dave did not eat properly today, there is no food in the stomach to slow things down. Food acts like a bouncer that slows alcohol entry and gives the liver more time to process it. Without that bouncer, the ethanol molecules are essentially throwing their own party in the bloodstream, completely unchecked. Within 30 minutes of that first beer, Dave is already beginning to feel a slight warmth in his chest and a subtle loosening of his normally very rigid accounting brain posture. Meanwhile, in the liver department of Dave headquarters, the liver has received an urgent notification. Imagine a tiny flat-design cartoon liver wearing an office worker badge, sitting at a cramped desk surrounded by overflowing paperwork. The liver is the primary organ responsible for metabolizing alcohol, and it is about to get very busy. The liver can process approximately 1 standard drink per hour through a special enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, which converts ethanol into acetaldehyde. Now, acetaldehyde is actually quite toxic, it is the villain of this story, and the liver quickly converts it again into acetate, which is far more harmless and eventually broken down into water and carbon dioxide. The problem is, this whole process has a strict speed limit. The liver cannot go faster no matter how much alcohol arrives. It is like a 1-lane road that can only let 1 car through per hour, while Dave keeps sending more and more cars from the bar. Now is a great time to talk about blood alcohol content, or BAC, because this number is absolutely central to understanding everything that is happening to Dave tonight. BAC measures how many grams of alcohol are present per 100 milliliters of blood. At 0.02% BAC, a person feels slightly relaxed. At 0.05, inhibitions begin to lower and mood lifts noticeably. At 0.08, which is the legal driving limit in most countries, coordination starts declining and judgment becomes significantly impaired. At 0.15, balance is affected. At 0.3, a person may lose consciousness. And beyond that, we enter genuinely dangerous territory that we sincerely hope Dave never reaches. Dave is currently sitting at about 0.04 and feeling what he describes to his bar friend as pleasantly social. His flat-design animated face is slightly pinker than before, and his usually crossed arms are now gesturing openly as he talks. Ah, the brain. The most interesting stop on our alcohol tour tonight. As ethanol travels through the bloodstream, it eventually crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is a normally very selective and strict security checkpoint that separates the brain from the general bloodstream. Ethanol is small enough and sneaky enough to slip right through like it is on the VIP list. Once inside, alcohol primarily affects the central nervous system as a depressant. Now, when we say depressant, we do not mean it makes you sad. We mean it slows down the communication between neurons. The first systems to get affected are those responsible for inhibition and self-control, which is precisely why after 2 drinks people start telling their coworkers things they absolutely did not plan to say on Monday morning. Dave is currently telling a complete stranger at the bar that he has always believed he could have been a professional jazz drummer if his parents had been more supportive. Here is where things get genuinely fascinating from a neuroscience standpoint, and we promise to keep it entertaining. Inside the brain, there are 2 neurotransmitters that are absolutely critical players in the alcohol story. First, GABA, which stands for gamma-aminobutyric acid, is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It slows neural activity and promotes calm, relaxation, and reduced anxiety. Alcohol enhances the effect of GABA significantly. This is why that warm, relaxed feeling washes over you after a drink. Then there is glutamate, which is the primary excitatory neurotransmitter, responsible for stimulating brain activity, memory formation, and sharp thinking. Alcohol suppresses glutamate activity. So essentially, alcohol is pressing the accelerator on your calm systems while slamming the brakes on your thinking and memory systems simultaneously. Dave currently believes he is having the most profound conversation of his life about jazz drumming, but he will retain approximately none of it by morning. The brain, illustrated as a flat design control center, is covered in blinking yellow warning lights. Back at the bar, Dave has finished beer number 1 and is feeling genuinely fantastic. His posture is relaxed, his smile is wider, and he is laughing at jokes that he probably would have only politely chuckled at while sober. The bartender slides over a second beer, and Dave accepts it with the easy confidence of a man who has absolutely forgotten that he told himself 2 drinks was the plan. This is partly social pressure, partly the warm glow of slightly lowered inhibitions, and partly the fact that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning and impulse control, is already getting a little fuzzy around the edges. The prefrontal cortex is essentially the responsible adult in the room, and right now it is sitting in the corner of Dave's brain, wearing noise-canceling headphones, increasingly unable to supervise the proceedings. Dave raises his second glass and thinks, and I quote, "This is fine, it is still early." While the brain party is ramping up, the cardiovascular system is also responding in its own dramatic fashion. Ethanol causes blood vessels to dilate, a process called vasodilation. When blood vessels widen, blood flows closer to the skin surface, and this produces that characteristic warm flushing feeling and rosy cheeks that many people associate with drinking. Dave is currently convinced he just looks healthy and vibrant. His heart rate has also slightly increased, which is why some people feel a pleasant warmth in their chest. However, here is the important nuance that the animated diagram on screen is now showing. While small amounts of alcohol can temporarily feel warming, the dilation of blood vessels actually causes your body to lose heat more rapidly. In cold environments, this is genuinely dangerous. Dave is inside a warm bar, so he is fine, but the science lesson stands. The cardiovascular system, illustrated as a tiny red cartoon heart character with a thermometer and a garden hose, is simultaneously sweating and shivering in confusing contradiction. Has anyone ever noticed that a few drinks into the evening, suddenly everyone becomes a storyteller, a philosopher, and a comedian simultaneously? There is a perfect neurological explanation for this phenomenon that involves the suppression of social anxiety pathways. Normally, the brain runs a constant background process of social risk assessment, essentially asking before you speak, is this appropriate? Will people judge me? What are the consequences? This process is largely governed by areas of the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. As alcohol suppresses these systems, the filter comes down. People say what they actually think, share stories they would normally gatekeep, and laugh more freely. For Dave, who is normally a fairly reserved accountant who communicates primarily through spreadsheets and carefully worded emails, this manifests as him now describing his entire life philosophy to a man named Barry who came to the bar to watch football. Barry is nodding politely. Barry did not expect a philosophy lecture tonight. But here we are, and this is the beautiful chaos of ethanol at work. While the brain is having the time of its life and the heart is doing its warm vasodilation thing, down in the digestive system things are considerably less festive. Alcohol irritates the stomach lining in a very direct and rude fashion. Ethanol stimulates the production of gastric acid, which is the same acid responsible for breaking down food. When there is not much food present to absorb that acid, the stomach lining starts getting irritated. This is one of the primary reasons why drinking on an empty stomach feels more intense and also why nausea can develop more quickly. Dave is currently experiencing what he is diplomatically calling a slight gurgle, but what his stomach, illustrated as a small round cartoon character with an extremely unhappy expression and a sign reading "Please send food," would describe as a complete betrayal of trust. The stomach is sending urgent signals upward toward the brain, but the brain, partially sedated by ethanol and distracted by the ongoing jazz drumming conversation, is largely ignoring these messages. Beer number 3 has appeared. It arrived because Barry bought a round to reward Dave for the philosophy lecture, which Barry actually found surprisingly interesting by the time he got used to it. The cerebellum is about to become our next featured organ. The cerebellum sits at the back of the brain and is responsible for coordination, balance, and fine motor control. It is essentially the part of the brain that makes sure you can walk in a straight line and pick up objects without knocking them over. As BAC continues to rise and ethanol concentration in the brain increases, the cerebellum begins experiencing significant disruption. Neural signals between the cerebellum and the muscles become slower and less precise. Dave just reached for his beer and knocked over someone's peanut bowl on the bar. He laughed, apologized, and helped pick them up, but 5 of them went on the floor. The animated cerebellum character, previously depicted as a very precise little robot with a ruler and a protractor, has now misplaced both tools and is sitting on the floor looking puzzled. If you have ever spent a night at a bar and noticed that you seem to visit the bathroom approximately every 20 minutes after a certain point, congratulations, you have personally experienced the diuretic effect of alcohol firsthand. Here is why it happens. Under normal circumstances, your body produces a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, which signals the kidneys to reabsorb water back into the bloodstream rather than sending it all to the bladder. Alcohol suppresses ADH production, which means the kidneys receive no such instructions and they send significantly more fluid to the bladder than usual. For every alcoholic drink consumed, the body can excrete up to 100 to 350 milliliters more urine than it takes in from the drink. This is why dehydration is such a significant component of hangover misery. Dave has now made 4 trips to the bathroom and is beginning to wonder if something is wrong with him specifically. Nothing is wrong with him specifically. This is just the chemistry. Let us take a moment to explain why alcohol feels genuinely good in the early stages, because understanding this mechanism is crucial to understanding why people drink in the first place. Alcohol stimulates the release of dopamine in the brain's reward pathway, specifically in an area called the nucleus accumbens, which is the brain's primary pleasure and reward center. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter most directly associated with feelings of pleasure, motivation, and reward. When dopamine floods the nucleus accumbens, the brain receives a very clear message: whatever just happened was good, and we should do it again. In the animated visualization, the nucleus accumbens is depicted as a tiny dance floor that has just received a massive dopamine delivery. Tiny cartoon molecules are dancing, confetti is falling, and a disco ball has appeared from nowhere. This dopamine reward signal is also fundamentally why alcohol has addictive potential for some people. The brain learns to associate drinking with reward, and over time begins to expect and even crave the dopamine hit. For now though, Dave is simply having a great Friday. Around drink 3 or 4, something fascinating and slightly alarming begins happening with memory formation. The hippocampus, which is the brain region primarily responsible for converting short-term experiences into long-term memories, starts getting significantly disrupted by elevated blood alcohol levels. At moderate BAC levels, this results in patchy memory. Some moments are recorded clearly, others are not. At higher BAC levels, this disruption can become so complete that the hippocampus essentially stops recording altogether, resulting in what is called a blackout. During a blackout, a person can still walk, talk, and interact, but no new long-term memories are being formed, so the period simply does not exist in their memory afterward. The animated hippocampus is illustrated as a tiny camera operator in a recording booth. As Dave's BAC rises, the camera operator first starts dropping rolls of film on the floor, then the camera starts flickering, and finally the little character just sits down, shrugs, and puts up a sign reading "Filming suspended for the evening." The bar has a small dance floor in the back, and Dave has just discovered it exists. 3 beers in, with his cerebellum slightly compromised, his inhibition significantly reduced, his dopamine system cheering him on, and his memory recording becoming unreliable, Dave has made a decision that his sober self would describe as extremely bold. He is going to dance. And not a reserved, careful sway-in-place sort of dancing either. Dave has decided he is going to genuinely dance in a way that expresses his inner jazz drummer. What follows is a sequence that is simultaneously joyful, enthusiastic, and mechanically questionable. He is offbeat. He is using arm movements that no choreographer would recognize. He nearly bumps into 2 people. And yet, and this is the important part, Dave has never felt more confident about his dancing ability in his entire life. This is because the brain regions responsible for self-critical evaluation are currently operating at significantly reduced capacity, and Dave cannot accurately perceive the gap between intention and execution. While Dave is dancing and generating genuine body heat from physical exertion, we should revisit the temperature paradox that alcohol creates in the body, because it is genuinely important and frequently misunderstood. As we mentioned earlier, alcohol causes vasodilation, the widening of blood vessels near the skin surface. This produces a subjective feeling of warmth, which is why alcohol is culturally associated with warming up in cold weather. However, this feeling is physiologically deceptive. While you feel warm on the surface, your core body temperature is actually dropping because heat is escaping through your dilated surface vessels at an accelerated rate. This is called peripheral vasodilation-induced heat loss. In cold environments, this can lead to dangerous hypothermia even while the person feels comfortably warm. Dave is currently sweating slightly from dancing and feels extremely warm. His core temperature is actually slightly below normal. His body's thermostat, illustrated as a tiny cartoon thermometer character in a control room, is reading the wrong gauges and feeling very confused about what is actually happening. Back in the liver department of Dave headquarters, things have deteriorated significantly since the cheerful 1 drink per hour processing we described earlier. The liver is now facing a backlog that would make any project manager weep. While the liver processes at its fixed rate using alcohol dehydrogenase enzymes, the excess ethanol that it cannot yet process continues circulating in the bloodstream, making repeated passes through the brain, heart, and other organs. The acetaldehyde intermediate, that toxic molecule produced during alcohol metabolism, is also accumulating faster than it can be converted to harmless acetate. Acetaldehyde is directly responsible for many of the most unpleasant effects of drinking, including flushing, nausea, and headache. It is also the primary culprit behind hangover symptoms the following day. The cartoon liver office worker has now called for backup, but the backup enzymes are already at full capacity. There are tiny urgent memos scattered everywhere. A wall-mounted sign reading "Maximum processing capacity reached" is flashing in red. The liver worker puts his tiny cartoon head on his desk. Here is a scientific fact that surprises most people: while alcohol often makes people feel drowsy and fall asleep more easily, it actually significantly reduces the quality of sleep you get. This is one of the cruelest tricks in the alcohol playbook. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement sleep. REM sleep is the stage most essential for memory consolidation, emotional processing, learning, and feeling genuinely rested. When blood alcohol levels drop during the night, which they do, as the liver continues metabolizing, the brain bounces back with what is called a rebound effect, increased brain activity, disrupted sleep cycles, and a tendency to wake up repeatedly in the early morning hours. This is why people who drink before bed often feel that they slept for 8 hours but still wake up exhausted. The animated sleep cycle diagram shows Dave's expected sleep architecture as a beautiful wave, then shows what actually happens as a jagged, chaotic scribble with large gaps and question marks where the REM sleep should be. It is now approaching midnight, and Dave has switched to drinking water, which is genuinely excellent news for his body and his morning self. This is actually a critically important behavior to highlight because hydration during and after drinking is one of the most effective tools available for reducing hangover severity. As we discussed, alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone, causing excessive fluid loss through urination. Every glass of water Dave drinks right now is helping to replenish the fluid, maintain electrolyte balance, and give his kidneys something reasonable to work with. The kidneys, illustrated as two relieved cartoon characters, are visibly grateful and have put up a small banner that reads "Thank you." Additionally, water does not add more ethanol to the bloodstream, which gives the liver the precious time it needs to clear the backlog of alcohol molecules from the circulation. The rate of ethanol metabolism in the liver does not speed up just because you drink water, but by stopping new alcohol input, you are finally letting the one-lane road clear its queue. Dave has made an excellent and critically important decision. He called a rideshare to get home. This is the single most important responsible choice depicted in our entire animated story tonight, and we want to pause and genuinely celebrate it. Driving under the influence of alcohol is one of the most dangerous decisions a person can make, not only for themselves but for every other person sharing the road. Even at a BAC level that feels perfectly manageable, where a person feels largely in control, reaction times, visual processing, decision-making speed, and hazard perception are all measurably impaired. Studies consistently show that people dramatically overestimate their own driving ability when drinking, precisely because the alcohol has impaired the very cognitive functions needed to accurately assess impairment. The car arrives, Dave gets in safely, and the animated rideshare vehicle drives smoothly away from the bar while the remaining bar patrons wave goodbye. Dave's prefrontal cortex, barely conscious in its noise-canceling headphones, gives a small relieved thumbs up. While Dave sleeps, the body does not take a break. In fact, the next several hours represent an intense period of biochemical processing that determines exactly how miserable or manageable the morning will be. The liver continues its steady metabolic work, converting acetaldehyde into acetate and breaking down the remaining ethanol at its fixed rate of approximately 1 standard drink per hour. Meanwhile, the kidneys continue managing fluid balance, and the body works on addressing the inflammation and oxidative stress caused by alcohol metabolism byproducts. Acetaldehyde, in particular, causes oxidative stress by generating reactive oxygen species, essentially tiny molecular troublemakers that damage cells. The body deploys antioxidant systems to combat these, but they can become overwhelmed after heavy drinking. The immune system also responds to the irritation caused by alcohol, releasing inflammatory compounds called cytokines, which contribute to the general feeling of misery, headache, fatigue, sensitivity that characterizes a hangover. All of this is illustrated as a nighttime factory scene inside Dave's body, running at full capacity under the light of a cartoon moon. Good morning, Dave. Or not so good morning, depending on your perspective. The hangover has arrived, and it is a comprehensive physiological event that has multiple simultaneous causes, all of which we are now perfectly equipped to explain. First, dehydration. The excessive fluid loss caused by ADH suppression has left Dave with significantly lower blood volume and cellular hydration, causing the classic throbbing headache as blood vessels in the brain adjust. Second, acetaldehyde accumulation. Toxic metabolic byproducts are still being cleared. Third, sleep disruption. Despite sleeping 8 hours, the suppression of REM sleep has left Dave feeling genuinely unrefreshed. Fourth, blood sugar imbalance. Alcohol interferes with glucose production in the liver, leading to low blood sugar, which contributes to shakiness, weakness, and fatigue. Fifth, inflammation. The cytokines released by the immune system create what researchers sometimes call a mini flu-like state. Dave is sitting on the edge of his bed, and the animated version of his face is exactly the shade of slightly green-gray that tells you everything you need to know. Since we care deeply about Dave and about you, let us spend a moment on what actually helps a hangover versus what is a popular myth. Water and electrolytes genuinely help address the dehydration component. Sports drinks or coconut water work well here. Food, particularly carbohydrates, helps stabilize blood sugar levels and gives the stomach lining something to absorb. Sleep, if possible, helps the brain catch up on the REM cycles it missed. Time is the only true cure. The liver needs time to finish metabolizing all remaining alcohol and acetaldehyde. Pain relievers can help with headache, though aspirin and ibuprofen should be used cautiously as they can irritate an already irritated stomach lining. Acetaminophen should genuinely be avoided when alcohol is still in the system as it can stress the liver. Now, the myths: coffee does not sober you up, it just makes you a more alert, impaired person. Greasy food before bed does not absorb alcohol already in the blood. And the infamous hair of the dog, another drink to cure the hangover, merely delays the inevitable while adding more work for an already exhausted liver. And so, dear viewer, we have completed our full animated tour of A Friday Night with Dave, narrated by biology, chemistry, and neuroscience with a healthy side of humor. From the first sip at the bar door to the next morning on the edge of the bed, alcohol touches virtually every major system in the body simultaneously: the brain, the liver, the heart, the kidneys, the stomach, the immune system, and the sleep cycle all respond to ethanol in fascinating and sometimes frustrating ways. The science of alcohol is genuinely remarkable, and understanding it does not have to be boring. Dave, to his credit, made mostly good decisions tonight. He ate something eventually, he drank water toward the end, and most importantly, he did not drive. He learned that 2 drinks was perhaps an optimistic plan for a Friday after a rough week, and next time he might eat a proper dinner first. The body is an extraordinary machine, and it handles a remarkable amount. Treat it with respect, drink responsibly if you choose to drink, and always, always know your ride home before the evening begins. Take care of your Dave. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching.